Should you drive your third shot or should you drop it? If you get a high ball in transition zone, should you attack it or should you reset the ball? You can find a ton of YouTube videos attempting to clarify these questions, and usually the answers are pretty simple and clear-cut. But when I actually try to apply these simple strategies, things didn't go very smoothly. I would end up getting my team in trouble, and my shots felt inconsistent, and it made it harder for my partner to prepare for the next ball. For a long time, I couldn't figure out why these quote-unquote simple strategies just wouldn't work for me. And if you're struggling with shot selection too, the chances are you're not alone. Because the truth is, shot selection in pickleball is anything but simple. In fact, there's so much going on in every single shot, it makes shot selection one of the hardest skills to master in pickleball. In this video, I'm going to share with you some of my biggest learnings on shot selection, broken down in a way that's actually digestible for amateur players like you and me. More specifically, players that are somewhere between the 3.0 to the 4.5 skill range. Everything I'm going to share in this video comes from two places: my own self-reflection and research over the past 2 years of my pickleball journey, and also coachings I've received from professional players and professional coaches. So in order to understand which shot to hit and when, we first need to understand what are the different factors that go into shot selection. Because once you understand these factors, you'll realize something very important. There's no such a thing as the universal best shot in any given situation. It all depends on who you are as a player, because we're all different. So when I first started pickleball 2 years ago as a 3.0 player, I kept on hearing players talking about the same thing over and over, and that is, the third shot drop is so hard. It's a lot easier to hit a third shot drive. But objectively speaking, that couldn't be any further away from the truth. From a pure mechanics perspective, the drive shot is actually a much harder shot to execute than a drop shot, and here's why. To hit a solid drive, you first need to have very good footwork. You have to get to the ball early, and you have to be balanced at contact. Even if you do arrive early, you still may need to make additional adjustment steps or small stutter steps to create the right amount of space between your body and the ball. At the same time, you're also required to rotate your hips, turn your shoulders, and load your body with power. Now, because drive is a speed up shot, you also need to accelerate your paddle through the ball. That acceleration is what generates pace, but it also makes the timing of the shot harder. The faster you swing, the smaller your margin for error. And that's why when players try to hit a drive with 100% of their power, miss hits become much more common. And that is not even the end of it, because your swing path also has to change depending on how high you're contacting the ball. Driving the ball from knee high requires a very different swing path from driving the ball from chest height. So now, let's assume everything went right. You moved well, you spaced correctly, and you rotated correctly. You struck the ball with the sweet spot of your paddle. Now the ball leaves your paddle fast, and your opponent will use the pace you gave them against you. They're also going to hit the ball back fast at you. All of that just means you have less time to recover from your drive shot, reposition, and prepare for the next shot. Again, all of that demands a lot of good footwork and athleticism, which, frankly speaking, not everybody has. Now compare that to the basic drop shot. At its simplest, a drop shot is just a long push dink that happens further back in the court. And when you hit a drop shot, your arms and your body can be more extended. You don't have to be in perfect balance, although being in good balance does help, but it's not a requirement for hitting a decent drop shot. You also don't have to arrive at the ball as early as when you drive the ball. That just makes the drop shot even easier, but it's not a requirement. You also don't have to have very precise spacing between your body and the ball like the way you do with drive shots. The mechanics for a basic drop shot is also very simple. It's linear. There's no hip rotation involved. There's no shoulder turn. There's no explosive paddle acceleration. And all of this makes the drop shot a much more forgiving shot to execute because of its simple mechanics. You can be a little closer to the ball or you can be a little further away from the ball and you'll still be able to hit a decent drop shot. Since the swing of the drop shot is slower, it also makes it easier for you to time the shot, because slower paddle speed means more margin, which means more consistency. And finally, because the ball travels slower, it actually gives you more time to recover from the drop shot and move up and prepare for the next shot. Less speed, less stress, and less athletic requirement. Now, if we agree that the drive shot is mechanically harder to execute than a drop shot, this now begs the question, why do players at the beginner or intermediate level believe the drive shot is the easier shot to execute on the third compared to the drop shot? And I think it comes down to an unrealistic expectation for what a good drop shot looks like. When many players imagine a good drop shot, in their mind, they're probably picturing a ball clearing the net by about 20 inches, and right after it crosses the net, it dives down rapidly, then the ball bounces right at the kitchen line. Now, that is actually hard to do, especially if you're trying to do that consistently. Even the pro players cannot execute that type of drop shot on a consistent basis in real matches. So what actually changed everything for me was redefining what a successful third shot drop actually looks like. I stopped thinking about a successful third shot drop being a shot that's going to take me all the way to the kitchen line. Instead, I started viewing the third shot drop as my first attempt at getting me and my partner closer to the kitchen. I'm not expecting to move in right after my third shot drop. In fact, I just need my third shot dropped to be good enough to make my fifth shot a little easier. And maybe that leads to an even easier seventh shot or even ninth shot. It's an iterative process. And once I gave myself more permission to add more margin to my drop shot, aim higher over the net, and also stop rushing, drops suddenly became easier and far more consistent for me. So the key takeaway here is that your goal when you hit a third shot drop is not to hit a perfect drop shot. The goal here is to hit the most repeatable drop shot that's going to help make your next shot a little bit easier. And you keep doing that until you eventually get to the kitchen. Now that we've talked about shot selection is not simple, I want to share 3 simple steps that I personally go through before deciding which shot to hit in any given situation. I sprained my ankle very badly right before one of my tournament games with my son at the start of February this year, and it really sucked for me. What sucks even more is that I still don't know how much longer this recovery is going to take. Will I ever be back to 100% again? The biggest lesson out of this injury for me is making sure that I wear the right equipment during my practice and reg games. One of the things I started using since my injury are these custom-made gold carbon fiber high-performance insoles from Victory. Not only they help enhance my comfort and performance on the court with its unmatched support for the arch of my feet, but what I really love about these insoles is that they offer better stability to my feet, in particular my toes and heels. And thanks to the full-length carbon fiber base plate, it also gives me better energy return and helps to absorb the shock during high-impact movements, which happens frequently in pickleball. As a guy who likes doing analysis and digging into numbers quite a bit, I was impressed when I found out that the Victory insoles can help reduce the risk of foot injury by 41% and lower leg injuries by 22%. If you're interested in protecting yourself better, you can buy a pair of these with 20% discount using my link down below in the description. And if you're not completely satisfied, there's also a 120 days money back guarantee. So why not give these a try now? The first step is to focus on myself. I need to be very clear about which shots I can execute comfortably and under what circumstances can I execute them comfortably. Which shots should I not be using and why? And it honestly doesn't even matter what other people tell you which shot you should be hitting and which shot you should not be hitting, because that person giving you the advice may not even fully understand your abilities, your limitations, and also your tendencies. The self-awareness of what you're capable of executing in any given situation needs to actually happen before you even step onto the court. And it takes a lot of self-reflection and also reviewing your own match footage. But the more honest you can be about your own limitations, the more likely you're going to be able to make good decisions in a real game under pressure. The second step is identifying the most reliable shot that I have in my own toolbox to deal with the next incoming ball. In other words, what is the easiest shot for me to hit right now? And to be able to answer that, I'm quickly processing things like how fast is the ball coming? What kind of spin does the ball have? How high is the ball? Where is my body relative to the contact point? Can I realistically get to the ball early and balanced? How difficult will this shot gonna be for me to execute based on my own tendencies and limitations? Will I have enough time to recover from that shot and get to the next shot? And this is where a lot of players get into trouble, because sometimes when people give you suggestions and advice on which shot to take under certain situation, they are probably assuming you have all the different shots available and you can execute all of those shots very comfortably in many different situations. Therefore, assuming you have everything available, they're making the recommendation that you should be hitting certain shot that's going to make it the most effective. However, not everybody has all the shots available at any given situation, so keep that in mind. And just because a top pro can drive the ball from knee high repeatedly with a lot of spin and a lot of consistency, it doesn't mean it's a smart idea for you to do the same thing. So the goal here isn't to execute the flashiest shot. Instead, the goal here is to select the shot that can be most consistently executed for a given situation. That's what I consider as a high percentage shot. It can be the same situation, but depending on who you are, what your limitations are, what your capabilities are, that shot might be very different for each person. The third and the final step, I'm asking myself, what kind of ball am I likely going to get back after my current shot? And how does this shot help my next decision? And this step actually requires better core awareness. For example, where am I positioned? Where's my partner positioned? And where are my opponents positioned when I take the shot? What are my opponent's strengths and weaknesses? Some players are very comfortable handling pace, but struggle with a softer drop shot at the kitchen, and others are complete opposite. Choosing a shot that makes your opponents most uncomfortable while still being the most reliable for you to execute is what's really going to elevate your game. The level of intentional shot selection, in my opinion, is what really separates the 4-5+ players from everyone else. If you enjoyed this video or learned something you hadn't thought about before, liking it or sharing this video would mean a lot to me. If you want to see more content like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you have your own tips or experiences on shot selection or decision making, I'd love for you to share them in the comments down below so others can learn from you too. And this is John from Backpaddle Pickleball. I'll see you in the next video.